Let's go to the region with MS Now international reporter Inez de la Cuetara in Tel Aviv. And with me in New York, MS Now senior national security reporter David Rohde and editor of The Insider, Michael Weiss. Also joining us, former senior official at the Pentagon during the Obama administration, Wendy Anderson. Inez, let's start with the ongoing strikes by the U.S. and Israel. What's been destroyed? Who's been killed?
Hey, Anna, so in terms of what's actually been destroyed, we're not getting a whole lot of clarity from the Pentagon. They were just asked moments ago about the status of Iran's nuclear program and ballistics weapons, and they wouldn't get into it. They said, General Dan Kane said that it would take a while to conduct battle damage assessments. So no specifics on that front, but we are learning more about the casualties that are rising across the region. Here in Israel, sirens have been blaring throughout the day, and just today there were at least 19 people injured in a strike. At least 10 people have been killed since the beginning of this operation. In Iran, officials there are reporting that at least 555 people have been killed, including at least 165 in a single strike on a girls' school. Iranian officials also say that a hospital was struck, as well as military facilities across the country. In Lebanon today, that's another front that's been opening up, with Hezbollah joining this war. At least 31 people killed after Israelis struck the Israelis struck Beirut and southern Lebanon. And meanwhile, we're also learning more about American deaths in the region. So CENTCOM saying that a fourth U.S. service member was killed. We understand this is someone who was injured during the initial attack and who has succumbed to their injuries. And the president and Pentagon officials just now warning there could be more U.S. casualties to come.
Inez, can you talk to us more about the kind of Iranian retaliation we're seeing?
Yeah, so the Iranians, really lashing out, really fighting for their survival and responding just as they had said they would. So targeting U.S. interests in the region, U.S. bases. We know there have been, explosions heard or attacks reported in Bahrain, in Qatar, in Kuwait. In Kuwait, very scary incident today where 3 American jets were shot down. We understand that was a case of friendly fire. Kuwaiti air defense is accidentally shooting down those jets, and there were no injuries reported there. But Kuwait, we know, has been targeted by Iran as well. Bahrain, the United Arab Emirates as well. Today, Iran targeting energy facilities, and Omani officials also said that there was an oil tanker that was hit by a boat filled with explosives. So real concerns about what that could mean for the economy, for the American people back home, prices of oil, and really this conflict widening, no end in sight. The president earlier saying this could go on for 4 to 5 weeks. Pentagon officials just now wouldn't commit to a timeline.
Inez de la Cuetara, thank you for that reporting. And, you'll keep digging, of course. David, Secretary Hegseth, we played some of his comments at the Pentagon just a short time ago, seemingly to try to lay out expectations for this war that we're in now. But did he explain the reasoning for why now?
No. And the administration said they had intelligence that there was an imminent threat of Iran attacking U.S. forces. But members of Congress said they were told by the military officials there was no evidence of that. And what was most concerning about Secretary Hegseth's presentation, he sort of was saying there we're not going to have politically correct wars and it's not about regime change. But when President Trump announced this, he said the goal was for the Iranian people to rise up and change their government. And so my biggest concern is I don't hear a clear strategy for what the goal is from this administration. And most importantly, how are unarmed Iranian civilians going to take over and topple a government that killed at least 7,000 protesters just a few weeks ago? So it's sort of war on the cheap. We're going to drop bombs from above and, call on Iranians to go and, attack this government without weapons. So I don't understand the long-term strategy.
Let's listen to more of what we heard from the defense secretary moments ago.
Iran was building powerful missiles and drones to create a conventional shield for their nuclear blackmail ambitions. Let me say that again. A conventional shield for their nuclear blackmail ambitions. Our bases, our people, our allies, all in their crosshairs. Iran had a conventional gun to our head as they tried to lie their way to a nuclear bomb.
Michael, what do you make of that reasoning? And does that explain why the rush? Because, of course, in June, the president had said Iran's nuclear capability had been obliterated, and now he's launching these attacks from Mar-a-Lago. He wasn't even at the White House this weekend.
Yeah, look, I mean, there's going to be intelligence that will come to light about what Iran was doing or not doing. The New York Times reported a few weeks ago they actually did invest in their missile capability after the 12-day war in June, right? They hadn't been doing so much work to reconstitute the nuclear program, but the missile was their program there was their first line of defense, right? The Israelis are claiming already, with 2 days of strikes, that they've wiped out 50% of the launchers. And from what I'm hearing from U.S. sources, the real threat now are these Shahid suicide drones, which have been used to devastating effect by the Russians in Ukraine. Funnily enough, Ukrainian counter-drone operators are being seconded by the Brits to help the Arab countries figure out how to shoot these things down, right? So there's no question that Iran has a conventional threat. They're using it right now. The real question is, what was the real imminent quotient here? You know, did this have to happen? And to David's point, you know, this is a lot of fire and fury, and then what? I was talking to Mick Mulroy, who's not only a former CIA ground branch officer who builds paramilitary organizations and kind of works with opposition groups in hostile environments. He was also the Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for the Middle East under Trump in term one. He said, look, we have spent years gaming out scenarios just like this, how to go with war, to war with Iran. None of them were very encouraging. None of them were good, right? And the chairman of the Joint Chiefs seemingly indicated that to Donald Trump before this operation got underway. The big question I have, too, we're not doing this alone, right? We're doing this with Israel. Israel has spent 47 years since the inauguration of the Islamic Republic preparing for exactly this, right? What are their intelligence capabilities, right? We know that they can infiltrate this country like nobody's business. They smuggled out the entire nuclear archive several years ago. They had hundreds of assets on the ground in June, which were launching drone strikes and attacking air defense systems. Who have they recruited within the regime or in the middle cadres of the regime or the military? We don't know. But these are million-dollar questions that nobody is even hinting at an answer for.
Well, and we just heard from Hegseth earlier, you know, this isn't Iraq. This is not an endless war. The U.S. isn't into, you know, building some new democracy in Iran. That's up to the Iranian people. Wendy, the IDF says Iran's, quote, senior terrorist leaders have all been eliminated, and their list includes some who were killed several months ago, like Hamas leader Sinwar. Presumably, some of these people have already been replaced. The question is, what is next, and who's next? Is it enough to just take out the people at the top? Can the U.S. then be hands-off?
Well, it's not enough to only take out the people at the top. In fact, we've had several assessments now come out in reporting that have suggested 3 or 4 tiers down in the leadership nest, or whatever you want to refer to it as, in Iran, have also been killed. And so it leaves us, I think, in an extremely precarious position as to who we would even be negotiating, whatever end state, as yet undetermined, we would be negotiating. Anna, I want to say 1 or 2 other things really quickly that David's and Michael's comments spurred in my mind. You know, we do now know, Pentagon briefers have acknowledged, and essentially the secretary and the chairman said so this morning, that there really was no evidence of any imminent Iranian strike. We basically know what the Iranians have been doing on and off for the last many years now. For the most part, that's true. That makes this a war of choice. Those words haven't been said. I want to say it very clearly, and its legal basis under war powers is already being challenged in Congress. I will say, though, that those facts, troubling as they are, do not automatically make this military action unwise. You know, there is a serious strategic argument for degrading Iran's missile forces and naval capabilities and nuclear trajectory. And I think we should listen very carefully to what the chairman of the Joint Chiefs said this morning. The military objective is to destroy Iran's offensive missile capacity and disrupt production and deny that nuclear advancement. He has given us the clearest, most limited, boundaried sense of what a clear objective is from the military front. I think what we know is the question, what are the political objectives? They need to be equally defined. Wars don't end with target lists, right? They end with political outcomes, and that absolutely is the question we don't have defined.
And Wendy, what happens to the nuclear material that is there now? Who's in control of that?
Well, it's a very good question, and it's one that international actors and others should be considering and working with. I will say that our intelligence community, having talked with several of them this morning, for example, not about classified information, of course, but hearing what they're focused on, that is something, obviously, that is of intense focus. Our military service members and our intel community deserve a lot of credit for executing the mission so far. As skillfully as they have. They're operating with amazing skill, precision, and deserve our support. But I do think that question is one that we're going to need to be asking very direct questions of the president. Hopefully folks will when he speaks shortly.
President Trump addressed the Iranian people, and you mentioned this, David. He said, quote, Iran will be yours to take. This will be probably your only chance for generations. But what do you think? Is that kind of a power shift possible under these circumstances?
I wrote a story about this, and it's the headline is The Trump Doctrine, the rest will be up to you. And that's what he said yesterday in his taped remarks. And so I spoke to former intelligence officials, and they're worried that we're not doing enough to help the Iranian people, that there's a way to have assets in there who are possibly urging members of the military, units of the military, to shift over to the opposition side or bluntly paying them to do so. Maybe there's elements in the IRGC even that are unhappy and they could be shifted over, or police units. And what's so concerning is that in the remarks, if we hear from the president and from Secretary Hegseth, they just don't mention that, and they kind of lay it all on the laps of unarmed Iranian civilians. A simple, pragmatic thing would be to try to also end this blockade of the internet that's preventing Iranians from even talking to each other. That would help protesters take to the streets. Right now, 96% of the internet is blocked in Iran.